This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Now then, here's a question for you. What do all of these songs have in common? Creep by Radiohead, Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis, Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, Georgia on My Mind, written by Hoagy Carmichael, but everybody probably knows it as a Ray Charles song, Sitting on the Dock of a Bay by Otis Redding, and countless others. Well, the answer is that they all use a particular songwriting trick, a way of using chords that is very, very widely used, probably second only to that modal interchange stuff that we looked at last week. I put together a little piece of music that illustrates this, and it ended up sounding a little bit sort of Noel Gallagher-esque, so I've entitled it Don't Look Back in Hunger. Here's the piece of music, and then I'll explain the aforementioned songwriting trick that is going on in it. Here it is. Okay then, here's the chord sequence that you heard at the beginning of the video, so let's set to breaking it down and see what's going on here. All of these chords, the C, A minor, the F and the G chords, they are all chords straight out of the what we're going to call the parent key here of C major. The key of C major contains the chords of C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and either B diminished or B minor 7 flat 5, and then back to C again. But as you can see, there are other chords in there that aren't in the key of C major. So let's have a look at these that I've shaded in, I think, pink here on the on-screen graphic. These are what we're going to call modal interchange chords. Now, I did an entire video on modal interchange last week, and I'll link to that in the description. But just briefly, modal interchange is essentially borrowing chords from keys that are related to the parent key of, in this case, C major. And as I say, in the video I did last week, I explained the all of the ins and outs of that, of how that works. So go and check that out if you're not sure what we're talking about there. But that still leaves the E7, A7 and D7 chords. Now, these are what we call secondary dominant chords, and that is really what I want to talk about today, secondary dominant chords. Basically, it's all to do with the cycle of fifths. So let's have a look at the cycle of fifths. There it is. Now, I'm going to be doing a full in-depth video about the cycle of fifths next week. But, you know, because there's a lot to it and there's a lot of applications that it has, this being one of them. All you need to know there is if you look at the 12 o'clock position on that dial, you will see that there is a C, okay? And then if we go clockwise round that, basically around that circle, you'll see we come to F, then B flat, then E flat, then A flat, and so on. What's going on there is C is the fifth note of an F major scale. Then F is the fifth note of a B flat major scale. And then B flat is the fifth note of an E flat major scale. E flat is the fifth note of an A flat major scale, and so on until you get all the way around to G, which is the fifth note of a C major scale. Basically, you end up going round in a big circle and coming back to where you started again. That's why it's called the cycle, or circle sometimes, of fifths, because you're going round to the fifth note of the major scale each time. So what relevance does it have here then? Well, basically, any chord in any chord sequence can be approached via its fifth. So if you remember in the chord sequence, we had an E7 chord going to an A minor. If you look in that cycle, you will see that E is the fifth note of A, okay? Either A major or A minor, and E is the fifth note of either an A major or an A minor scale, okay? And any chord can be approached via its fifth, and it's common practice to either play that fifth as a seventh chord, a dominant seventh chord, to give it its full name. Whenever you talk about E7, D7, G7, A7, whatever, any chord that is just something 7, that is actually an abbreviation for dominant seventh, okay? So we can either play that as a seventh chord, dominant seventh, or just simply as a major chord. That will work. You'll hear E major goes to A minor perfectly happily, because E is the fifth of A, or A minor. Now what happens here is that you end up, as you saw in the chord sequence, you end up introducing some chords that aren't in the parent key, okay? And if we're using the dominant chord, the seventh chord, it's a dominant seventh chord, a dominant chord, from outside the parent key. So we call it a secondary dominant chord, hence the title. They are very, very widely used. I mean, think of... well, one example that springs to mind straight away is, Sultans of Swing. Okay, you've got that A7 there. If you look in the cycle of fifths, you will see that A is the fifth of D. So an A7 can go to a D minor. Going to a bit further back in time, you've got While My Guitar Gently Weeps by the Beatles, where you've got, kind of a walk down from an A minor via these kind of chords, and eventually you end up going A minor, G, C, E7, which takes you back to the A minor again. So the E7 is the fifth of the A, which was why the E7 goes to the A. It's a secondary dominant chord. It's basically using the 5 chord of whatever chord you want to end up going to, and it provides a nice little bridge into the new chord. That's one way that you can use secondary dominant chords. Another way that you can use them is how I used it in here. There's an A7. Let's go back to the chord sequence again. You can see there's an A7 going to a B flat. Now, if you look, let's have a look back at the cycle again. You can see that A is the fifth of D. So how come the A7, the secondary dominant A7 chord, is going to a B flat? Well, basically, it's just throwing a little plot twist in, essentially. You are setting the listener up to expect there's the A7, and the listener is now expecting D minor, but you don't go there. You go to the B flat instead, which is one of those modal interchange chords. So it's not like you can only use secondary dominant chords to go to the chord that you would normally expect them to go to based on the cycle of fifths. You can just throw them in as a little bit, as I say, as like a plot twist. Make the listener expect something, subconsciously, expect it to go to this chord and then go to that chord instead. Like anything that has a little bit of surprise or shock value, it does become a bit predictable if you overuse it, so be careful how you use that one. A great example of this would be, the chord sequence that's been used for numerous times. I guess many people will know it as Creep by Radiohead, where you've got a G, which goes to a B or B7, and then you would expect that, based on the cycle of fifths, there it is, to go to, yes, E minor. But it doesn't. It goes G to the B or B7 and then C, and then a little bit of modal interchange, C minor. That is Creep by Radiohead. It's also He Ain't Heavy by the Hollies. It's also Georgia on My Mind by Hoagy Carmichael. It's been well used, well tried and tested, that little ploy there. So these are all different uses of, chords from outside the parent key. We looked last week at modal interchange. This week it's the secondary dominant chord. Primarily they are used to take you to a chord that would be based on the cycle of fifths. So any chord, just to reiterate, any chord can be approached via its fifth chord, and there's you would find that in the cycle of fifths. But you don't have to go there. You can set up that expectation in the listener and then go somewhere else, just as a way of, as I say, throwing in a little plot twist. So there you go. Secondary dominant chords. Great for spicing up a chord sequence and, signposting a chord or giving the listener a little bit of a surprise by taking them somewhere they weren't expecting. Try them out for yourself. See if you can spot them in some songs that you're already familiar with. And most of all, have fun with them. And as ever, up on my Patreon page, you will find that video of me playing the chord sequence and the video of me explaining it, and a chord chart to play to tell you what chords are in there, the basically thing you saw on screen in that little clip, and a backing track to play along with if you fancy having a go at playing along with it yourself. And I'll even put a PDF together with all of the chord shapes on, just in case any of them were unfamiliar to you, but I'm guessing they probably weren't. All of that is up on my Patreon page. There is the address, and the link is of course in the description. It's only $3 a month and you get all of these extra resources that go along with these little YouTube lessons that I put together. Thank you so much to everybody who's supporting me in that way, or any of the other ways, which are all linked down in the description. It is massively appreciated. I can't thank you enough. And thank you in advance if you're thinking about doing it. And that is pretty much it for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the video, found it useful and informative. And if you have, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not give me a like while you're at it? Don't forget the live stream, 5 p.m. every Friday, 5 p.m. UK time. We sit around and have a beer and a chat. It's a great way to kick off the weekend. I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.